ongoing. Breaking news, friends. Sensational news from Moscow. A member of the FSB has been blown up. Sensational explosions blew up a car. Boom, beta, boom.
More. They should have moved the car away.
The first deputy commander of Russia's Black Sea Fleet has been eliminated. This may have been a special operation by the SBU and GUR. Let's watch for more details. But if there's no flagship, there's no commander either. Makes sense. And in the Kursk region, a major general, the deputy commander-in-chief of the Navy, was also eliminated. Of the Russian fleet, Mikhail Gudkov. The series of special operations by the GUR and SBU of the armed forces continues. A powerful strike was delivered on an ammunition depot in Dnipro. A powerful detonation. The defense forces are attacking the occupied territories. There is also information that the GUR may have eliminated the vice admiral of the Black Sea Fleet. The former head of the occupation administration of Luhansk has been eliminated. This is the work of the SBU. The so-called former mayor of Luhansk was blown up. So friends, in Moscow, an FSB general was blown up. In the Kursk region, Major General Mikhail Gudkov, deputy commander-in-chief of the Russian Navy, was blown up, and the first deputy commander of the Russian Black Sea Fleet was eliminated. This is a series of brilliant special operations by Ukrainian intelligence services.
Judgment Night. The night of judgment has finally arrived, bringing with it a sense of anticipation and suspense.
Judgment Night, Judgment Night. Today, the Lipetsk airfield and factory welcome friendly Ukrainian drones. Drones are massively attacking Lipetsk, the Moscow region, and Moscow.
Look, there's the throne somewhere over there. Look.
Let's discuss all of this. The brilliant special operation by the SBU and Swigurs with top analyst Alexander Demchenko right now.
Generals have been eliminated, the top military command has been destroyed, officers, colonels, and so on have been wiped out. The entire leadership of the 8th Combined Arms Army, gone. The Russian army has been decapitated. There's no one left. I don't know how much more has to happen on the territory of the Russian Federation before they finally get rid of that drunk General Gerasimov. I think that, in fact, the 8th Combined Arms Army of the Russian Federation no longer exists. Because in case anyone doesn't know, the missiles struck the locations where the 8th Combined Arms Army of Russia was stationed and quartered. These fools probably thought that Ukraine had no more missiles and wouldn't be able to strike that far. But what do you mean that far if Ukraine has already struck even in Irkutsk? I don't know how much more has to happen on the territory of the Russian Federation before they finally get rid of that drunk General Gerasimov, who is just throwing away huge numbers of his own people. First of all, Putin doesn't care. And secondly, during his time, even Kursk has been taken. And during his time, planes were destroyed, 41 of them. The Crimean bridge was blown up, and now they've just gone and wiped out an entire army. The 8th Combined Arms Army of Russia in Donetsk. They used to boast all of Luhansk is ours, the whole Luhansk region is ours. They struck the oil refinery in Luhansk region, hit the railways, the railroad tracks in Donetsk region to keep them from advancing. To halt the offensive, to choke it off. Missiles flew over Crimea, drones flew too. And now they don't show anything in the public channels, in the Crimean channels, just a few whimpers and squeals here and there. Oh, they're coming. Oh, what are we going to do? You shouldn't have gone there, and you had no business settling in. What the hell did you come there for? To see someone else's land, occupiers. That's it. And the Crimean bridge is always a problem. There's still just a trickle left there. No one comes, no one can leave. It's been pickled. You get it? It's been pickled. What gets to me most of all in this whole story, Dasha? It's not that I was surprised. Putin hasn't surprised me for a very long time. But what? Let's put it this way. I have an unpleasant feeling, a bad aftertaste, because I understand that Putin is preparing a series of terrorist attacks. In the coming days and weeks, there will be a large series of terrorist attacks. Did I tell you about the terrorist attacks? There was Bryansk, there was Kursk, there was Voronezh. A huge number of civilians were killed by Putin and the FSB. I'm saying it once again now. In the coming days and weeks, there will be a series of terrorist attacks all over Russia. Most likely in Moscow. maybe also in other central or important regions, cities of the Russian Federation. What do I mean by that? If you notice, recently Vnukovo airport was almost destroyed. That is, a Russian anti-missile shot down a Ukrainian drone, which wasn't heading for Vnukovo, it was flying towards military targets. It shot down the drone, and the drone fell right into the yard, basically, of the airport, into the area near the airport. People were not evacuated. The carpet plant. So obviously there are no takeoffs, no landings, all flights are canceled, everything is at a standstill, the information boards aren't working. But thousands of people are left to stew, stuck there on the airport grounds. They're not being evacuated, nothing is being done with them. The airport is blocked off, everything is closed, the area is sealed, buses aren't running. That's it, they're just there. Civilians, Muscovites. Well, so they were probably preparing an attack, the destruction of thousands of people right there on the spot, so that later they could blame everything on Ukraine. And why? Congratulations on Putin's holiday, which you know what it's called. In Ukrainian, Zadnitsia means ass, and in Russian, it's Zhnitsa. In Russia, utility rates are going up by 40 to 45% if you add up all the federal, regional, and city rates. There's a taxi driver's revolt. Every third taxi driver didn't go to work. Gazprom is minus 1 trillion, bankrupt. And who will pay for it? The ordinary Russian citizen. They're facing a catastrophe. They call it a recession, but in Russian, it just sounds like a mess. And now Vladimir Putin has no money left for the war. Everyone is saying it and everyone knows it. Nabiulina knows it, Silvanov knows it, and even Sechin and Patrushev know that there's no money left for the war. And Putin knows it too. So what should be done now? I can predict what needs to be done. To push forward, to escalate on the one hand the Belarus front, the direction of the southeast, just to show at least some victories, to sell at least something to his plebs. And secondly, of course, to make the contract army in Russia cheaper or abolish it altogether, switching everything to a mobilization footing. Mobilization. Why pay this cannon fodder, which will be wiped out here in 3 weeks anyway and turn into disgusting, occupying, howling humus for Ukrainian soil? If you can do the same thing without paying them, why not? So, right now they are preparing mass terrorist attacks, a series of attacks all across Russia. I don't know what will be set on fire. Will it be the Yaroslavsky Central train station or some other station in Russia that burns? Will the State Department store catch fire? Will there be explosions in the metro? I don't even know what will happen. Will they blow up Ostankino together with Ernst to hell? I don't know. But I understand perfectly well that from Luzhniki to Prechistenka, from Prechistenka to I don't even know, to Kashirka, absolutely everything will be burning. Because right now, Putin needs to escalate to mobilize the population and throw them in again. He's playing Vabank. This is his last desperate push. Because there's no money left. Few people noticed, but this is important news that just came out. Abramovich suddenly pulled all his money out of Connecticut in America. He's now selling his steel plants. He invested $5 billion there. $5 billion? $5 billion, 200 million is the minimum estimated value. And he's selling it for 50 million. Now pay attention. What happened? I'll explain what happened. Putin was given a clear signal that there would be sanctions. Who was flying to Washington and talking to Trump's people? They were told to get their money out because soon there would be blows to the hands, the legs, and the cheeks. And Putin told his wallet, the handler who keeps his money, Roma, get the money out immediately. Whatever you manage to get out is yours. Take it. Roma arranged for 50 as an advance and 450 as a severance over the course of several months. Whether Roma will have time to formalize them or not is unclear. 95% loss on just one business. The entire Evras group is moving to Moscow. Putin is keeping Abramovich locked up in Russia. Abramovich is finished. Putin's wallet has simply died. That's the important news, Dasha. So Putin has problems both inside Russia and outside of it. And now Putin has to escalate and push things forward. That's why there will be bombings. He's already carrying them out. Every few days, there's a massive bombing of Ukraine. He's setting anti-records. Around 500 drones, 60 missiles, and so on and so forth. Recently, there was another one. Today, Zaporizhzhia, Odessa. It's unclear what will happen next, but there will be bombings, there will be terrorist attacks, and a flurry of sabotage. And this is what Putin is going to do now. He will do it on a massive scale. Vladimir Putin, look, this is my forecast for you. You often ask at the end of the program, what's the forecast? Well, here it is. Terrorist attacks in the coming days and weeks, terrorist attacks, and everything will be burning. This is a man who could destroy homes with people inside, with ordinary civilians, who could blow things up and terrorize 4 times over and terrorize the world. Moscow, who could simply take and destroy a neighboring country just like that. He is capable of anything. He was ready to destroy a train with civilians in the Bryansk region. He is ready to do anything now. He has no other option. He will now start throwing off ballast. For him, Russians are ballast.
Sasha, you've raised a very important topic. Friends, please like this video. Our format is Dasha plus Sasha, Sasha plus Dasha. Every week we work on my YouTube channel. Thank you for 700,000. We've reached this milestone. We're very grateful to you. Friends, write in the comments what you think about this. Give a like and share where you're watching from. I always read where you're watching us from and if you'd like to send support to Ukraine. Sasha, so Yermak came out and said that a ballistic missile is being put into serial production for the Sapsan. Now we've seen missiles fly toward Crimea, missiles fly toward Donetsk, toward Luhansk. What will happen next? Will missiles fly toward Moscow and St. Petersburg, targeting military facilities?
Everything will fly. That's obvious. That's exactly what's next. I'm concerned about completely different things. That the Sepson will fly, and Neptune, yes, will fly, and other missiles that are being developed right now. What do you think only 2 missiles are being developed? There are already different modifications. Hundreds of missiles have long been developed and are being prepared, stockpiled for strikes. Notice, this is what distinguishes the current situation. The situation from yesterday to today, from the previous ones. Let me explain. Not only did drones fly, but missiles were launched as well. Missiles were launched en masse, which means they are being stockpiled, which means the British, the French, the Europeans are all supplying them, which means there are correct decisions from the NATO summit, which means Europe has accepted the challenge and Europe will strike back. And unlike Putin, Europe has the money for this. That's why Putin is whining in Belarus, in Minsk, and declaring that he will scale back with his handler, hopefully meaning he will simply start cutting all defense spending. But the reason is simple and singular, and I always say this as I wrap up. Putin doesn't have money for the war. The climax is approaching, the finale is near, my friends. But that's not even the main issue. What worries me about this final stage of the process? I'm concerned that Putin has surely decided to take Belarus under his control. That he still intends to use Belarus as a staging ground, whether Lukashenko wants it or not. Either for offensive operations against Ukraine, Kiev, Chernihiv, or for air raids on central Ukraine, Kiev, Chernihiv, or in the north-central region, or even directly for an attack on the Baltic states. But we've discussed this with you many times. I have another scenario in mind. Do you know which one, Dasha? I think that in the near future, Putin will try to remove Lukashenko. I think that a coup d'etat is coming soon in Belarus. Putin surely has a plan B. Plan B, according to which Lukashenko needs to be removed, all the security has already been bought off. He's surrounded by agents. His press secretary, Natalia Eismont, is a KGB agent. Everyone knows this perfectly well. Everyone knows that his secretary of the Security Council, Wolfowitz, works for the Kremlin. Everyone knows that his prosecutor general works for the Kremlin. He has only one loyal minister of defense, and his son, Viktor Lukashenko, who is constantly saving him, who keeps his own paratroopers ready in case they try to remove him again, like they did several years ago. And it was Vladimir Putin who wanted to remove him during all those protests in 2020. And Lukashenko knew this perfectly well. He knows all about it. But there's Gazprom money hidden there. There's a lot hidden there from 2020. But even now, what's important is, I think that if Vladimir Putin needs Belarus and Lukashenko is now turning, he's twisting and turning 180 degrees, spinning around, trying to move toward Trump so that Trump will save him, so that Belarus doesn't become a staging ground, so that no one messes with Belarus, so that he doesn't get dragged into this whole Putin story. Putin is making his last push. Lukashenko doesn't want to make that final push. It's better if Putin makes his last push and ends up somewhere in the ground during that push rather than Lukashenko. You see, for Lukashenko, it's important to outwait, outlast, and ultimately survive Putin, because he knows that in the end, only one will be left standing. So Putin wants to be the only one left in the end without Lukashenko and put his own appointee in that position. Another one of his colonels or lieutenant colonels, not from Belarus, but from Russia. But Lukashenko doesn't want that. But since the situation is now extremely tense, since Vladimir Putin needs a Belarusian foothold, needs Belarusian territory, needs this war, needs escalation and the acceleration of everything and everyone, I keep saying this tirelessly. He needs to get rid of Lukashenko if the latter says, sorry, all I have for you is bread and potatoes. Bread and potatoes. There's nothing else. That's exactly why Vladimir Putin will most likely try to either squeeze Lukashenko even harder, and if that doesn't work, he'll try to remove him. And there's only one way to remove him. We all know perfectly well which one: liquidation. That's why the security is bought, everyone is bought. And Lukashenko knows this perfectly well. He understands all the risks, weighs all the risks, and he is preparing for a confrontation with Putin. For Ukraine, it's important that Putin, regardless of what kind of person Lukashenko is, does not touch or destroy him right now. That's what's important right now. God forbid Putin gains full control over the territory of Belarus. Right now, he doesn't have full control. No. No matter how much someone might want to exaggerate the situation to the extreme, or on the contrary, downplay Lukashenko's influence. Lukashenko does have influence over Belarus. Lukashenko holds Belarus. And for now, Lukashenko is walking a tightrope between Putin and something else that's still unclear. That's why I'm considering such a scenario, which is quite serious for us. This is a very important challenge, and it's crucial to keep an eye on this right now at this very moment.
You've brought up a very important topic. We will definitely talk about Kadyrov and about Teludinov and about the ethnic wars on Russian territory, and of course about the conflict between Azerbaijan and Russia. But the topic that also impressed me was Lindsey Graham and Trump playing golf. They played golf. And Trump said that, as I understand it, after the Senate returns from recess, they might vote for hellish sanctions against Russia. And now attention, what will Putin do? Will he somehow try to persuade Trump not to make this decision so that the Senate doesn't go through with it? Or will they go ahead and pass it anyway? And what will happen to Putin then?
Dasha, what will Vladimir Putin do? He'll save the money. He's already doing that. After all, I already told you about Roman Arkadyevich Abramovich. They're already moving money out. They're already moving out their export money, what they're still earning from their main capital and wallet, the Evraz Group. They're already moving it out of the state. He's already trying to save his offshore accounts, his shell companies, his money. He's already doing it. He handed over the investment portfolio to Kirill Dmitriev so that he would be untouchable, made him a sort of diplomatic figure who could save certain investment projects in the US, Vladimir Putin's money in the States or in Europe or wherever else. He's already doing it. Those schemes have been drawn up a long time ago. What will Vladimir Putin do? He'll try once again to muddy the waters. He'll try once again to drag things into some kind of negotiation process. He'll start talking about humanitarian exchanges. They're already talking about children. They're already gathering some children and so on. All of this is already happening. The question is something else. Why do I say some children? Because it's not for transfer. They show children who live in the occupied Donbass, and he tells them, oh, you're doing the press wrong, damn it. Hands behind your head. Elvira Nabiulina's children and a few other faces are sitting there laughing at Vladimir Putin's jokes. They're laughing because they know that soon they'll be the ones up against the wall, hands behind their heads getting shot. The same fate as Putin, to hell with him. Nabiulina senses that things are going to go bad in Russia, and she knows that everything will be pinned on her. She knows she's facing a terrible fate, that she'll either be neutralized, disposed of, or God forbid, even eliminated in the literal sense of the word. That's why Putin is already getting ready. They'll try to butter up Trump, negotiate with him, suggest, let's talk about a meeting. But listen, Trump can't stall any longer. The only thing he's doing, just like with the Iranians, is giving them time to prepare. The Iranians, for example, managed to take their missiles and move them somewhere. At least some of them, anyway. Well, now this guy is just moving nuclear cash instead of missiles. He takes it in suitcases, not the nuclear kind with a button, and locks it up in a bank. He takes this money and transfers it to Russia, to Russia, to Russia. For him, it's only about money and power, nothing else. There's no question of history of how he'll go down in history. All of that is just for the plebs. It's like chess for idiots, even. The real question is something else. There's only one question. How to hold on to power, how to keep the money, how to pass that money on to whoever needs to get it. That's it. Ideally, not to pass it on to anyone at all and just live forever. That's it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. And there will be sanctions. And the sanctions will be tough. But those sanctions would have been much tougher if Putin hadn't had time to prepare. It's one thing when you've moved your money out and it's not at risk. It's a whole different story when you no longer have any money. So what are you going to do next? Or what if that money gets frozen? We're not talking about some $300 billion in Russian gold and foreign currency reserves floating around Europe. He doesn't care about that money. That's Russians' money, not his. But this is his money. And the main thing is to make sure that money isn't touched. And now everything is being completely written off. That's what's happening right now. Putin is grabbing money from every possible place. He's just taking it. The problem is he has nowhere to go. He won't be able to fly anywhere. He won't be able to hide it anywhere except his own bunker. And everyone knows everything about that bunker. The Americans, Putin's security, Patrushev, everyone in the world knows.
By the way, you mentioned before that American and European intelligence agencies know all the bunkers completely. They have complete control over Putin's movements, and if necessary, they could eliminate him. This is a very interesting topic.
Of course they can. Yes, of course they know. Moreover, they know what materials the bunkers are made of, in which specific building the locks are located, where Vladimir Putin is right now, which rooms he has, where his underground passages are, and so on. Iranian engineers, like North Korean ones, differ from Russian engineers. You know how, Dasha, by their professionalism, they can actually go and build bunkers properly. They can build proper hangars, and they can construct underground corridors. North Korean engineers dig underground tunnels that go directly to South Korea, and no one even knows they exist. But for Putin, everything was done by Russian bungling engineers who just stole the money, didn't lay anything properly, and didn't protect anything properly. And Putin knows perfectly well that his bunker, in terms of safety, is no better than his portable toilet. If it explodes, all the crap will just gush out in every direction, and nothing will be left. Yeah, it's awful.
I suddenly thought about how you always say that if Iran flares up, if that happens, then the Middle East will flare up and the Caucasus will flare up too. Sasha, what's actually happening right now? Why are some kind of ethnic and interethnic wars starting inside Russia itself? Where could this lead?
Well, right now they're obsessed, blaming everything entirely on migrants. The head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Kirill, together with Bastrikin, Putin's buddy and classmate from Leningrad, just whipped up a mass hysteria. In this mass hysteria, who's the executor? The FSB. And on the ground, it's the cops. The police are the ones carrying it out. Well, the militia there. The militia, the executor. That's it. Although maybe it's already the police now. Who the hell knows what they call them in Russia these days? But that's not the point. The point is something else. They showed up. They detained someone there, started talking about the Safarov brothers. Damn, they took down 50 people in Yekaterinburg. They've got another operation going, face down on the floor. But at the same time, they just kidnapped people. A bunch of people are missing. It's just unclear where they are now. At the same time, they killed two. They killed two people. They killed two people. They just tortured them. They beat them, tortured them, and so on. In the basement, they killed them. They beat them to death. It's unclear how and for how long they were beaten or what else was done to them. Now the bodies have been brought to Baku, to Azerbaijan. Two bodies. There's hysteria there. They start beating. Obviously, this is also revenge against Azerbaijan. Here's the plane. It was shot down. We shot down the plane. Now, are we supposed to apologize too? Who are you for us to apologize to you? Some Caucasians, some Ukrainians, some Belarusians, some Moldovans. We are great. We are Russians. The whole country is in shit, but we are great. And that greatness is God knows where now. And even that was all built by foreigners. Italians, Portuguese, Jews, French, Germans, and so on down the list. But two people were killed. What does Aliyev do? He just smacks them in the face. He gave Putin and everyone else a loud slap in the face. They bought their way out with planes. But now what can you do? You can't buy your way out. There's no way to buy your way out now, because now it's all out there. This is already the second incident. They took two FSB agents. So what's the essence of the situation? They've now taken two FSB agents, actual FSB officers who, under the guise of being journalists, with journalist credentials, propagandists, Sputnik, Azerbaijan, Sputnik, Russia, they were working there in Baku. Two FSB agents. Dasha, this has never happened before. Nothing like this has ever happened before. For this to happen on the territory of post-Soviet countries, at least in Central Asia or the Caucasus. With Ukraine, that's a separate story. In Central Asia or the Caucasus, to actually detain people and twist their arms behind their backs. To send them to prison trying to deport two FSB agents. And to publicly expose these two FSB officers. By the way, I checked. And in a year, one of them received 2 million. And the second one got over 1 million. What kind of journalist do you have to be? What kind of journalist do you have to be to get that kind of money? Especially for Azerbaijan, that's pretty good money. You can live quite well on that, really well, in fact. So there have to be some journalists, propagandists. I don't know what will happen next, but with this kind of approach, soon Aliyev will grab Margarita by the scruff of the neck, kidnap her, and send her to a prison camp if Putin doesn't get the message any other way. If Putin doesn't get it any other way. And I suspect the situation will only get worse. Both Baku and Moscow have dug in their heels. Putin doesn't want to apologize. Aliyev doesn't want to swallow it, and he won't. Behind Aliyev stands Turkey. There's a joint army there. If Ankara and Baku want, they could completely shake up all of Central Asia and the entire Caucasus. And it will be very difficult for Putin, even without Iran involved. They could very well handle it themselves. Now just imagine the Turkish army suddenly appearing in Crimea out of nowhere. Where will the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation be if Erdogan goes in there under the guise of a peacekeeping mission? Putin loves peacekeepers after all. So, little green men, Turkish men will come in, red men with a crescent moon. What will he do then? Where will his Black Sea Fleet be? Where will all his occupiers be? Where will his army be stationed? Where will it stand? What will happen to the Crimean bridge then? What will happen to the Crimean bridge if Malyuk hands explosives over to Erdogan? You see, Dasha, we're talking about all these things, but the most remarkable thing in this situation is the following. They just came in and anything could have happened. All these people could have been connected to crime. They could have worked somewhere. It could have been an organized crime group. They could have been legal. They could have been ordinary civilians. We have no idea what it was at all. They went into people's homes and killed them. They killed and tortured. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter what was going on there, what the background was. They came in, killed, tortured, and there was an order from above. They would never have done this if there hadn't been an order from above. If there hadn't been an order from above. They took the Tajik after the Crocus incident, tortured him. There was an order from above. They took these people, tortured and killed them. There was an order from above. And Putin is responsible for this, and Bastrikin is responsible, and all those people who stirred up this migrant hysteria. Now, migrant children are not allowed to live in Russia at all if they are not studying, if they don't pass the unified state exam. It's strange. If they don't participate in this whole ridiculous system at all. It's just mass hysteria, and in fact, it's not just repression, it's a huge wave. It's a massive, bloody repressive machine that's been set in motion, and now they're going to try to do everything in parallel in order to hit all the former republics very hard and harshly. Notice, Dasha, this is the last thing I'll say. Right now, Azerbaijan. It's Azerbaijan now. They've set their sights, and already in the State Duma, all these Zatulins are saying Azerbaijan is next. That's our territory. Azerbaijanis are basically Russians, just a different kind of Russians. They say Turkey has nothing to do with them. They're already saying that over there. But Dasha, they struck Kazakhstan with a drone. They launched drones at Kazakhstan, claimed they were Ukrainian, but it was actually Russia's defense minister Belousov and chief of the general staff Gerasimov who launched them. The drones flew toward Kazakhstan. I think she's just in shock, to put it politely, from this whole story. He just had bread with Putin at Lukashenko's, and then bam, Russian drones are flying toward Kazakhstan. So what kind of signal is that? Another signal, meaning you're ours too. In other words, he's already losing his mind. Let me explain the reason. There's only one reason. There's no money left for Ukraine. At this point, whatever happens, happens, especially after Trump's sanctions. So here, at least in his mind, he's gradually starting to back down, but he still needs a constant war. Kazakhstan, well, okay, that's still a questionable story. There's China there with Azerbaijan, Turkey, but he needs to pick a victim. Who's next? Now it's Armenia. There's hysteria, the Orthodox Church. We've sent our agent oligarch there, and you're trying to destroy him. He's looking for a victim. He's searching for a place to start another war over thieves. Right now. And soon he'll open a second front.
Just wanted to add, as you mentioned, Morden literally made a statement yesterday that Baku is a Russian city, and it's time to start a special military operation.
There you go. Exactly. That's it. They're already preparing for something. They still can't forgive Aliyev for how he slapped them in the face during the Karabakh situation. They can't forgive Aliyev for the fact that Putin had to apologize to him. They can't forgive Aliyev for simply taking and turn towards Ukraine. And now imagine, Dasha, we're talking about Turkish troops, but Erdogan is pulling them all out. Azerbaijan and Turkey are two important countries through which all sanctioned goods pass into Russia. Besides China and Iran, these two countries are the most important. Imagine if they were gone. If they block all dual-use goods, civilian goods, and so on. What will Putin be left with, along with his aging, crumbling economy where, as I repeat, today is a holiday? It's a disaster. A red letter day on the calendar. What is he going to do with it? Nothing. So he's in a situation where he's escalating where he doesn't need to escalate. But he can't stop anymore. I think that's obvious. Imagine if, on top of everything else, we had bombed all of Oreshnik that Putin had. All the warehouses with Oreshnik. The warehouses with Oreshnik went up in flames. There's no more Oreshnik. That's it. A catastrophe. Can you imagine such news? Now that's a success. Do you remember that? And now there's news that some old man almost beat up Arestovich. They're literally reporting that some old guy almost beat up Arestovich. So against this backdrop, Dasha is reading out news like this. Just listen. In my opinion, this is just some kind of surrealism already. But we live in a world where, on one hand, Putin is preparing strikes against Oreshniks and trying to destroy Ukraine. And on the other hand, some old patriotic man is beating up Alexei Arestovich at some market in Spain. That's the kind of world we live in today. Although both pieces of news have a lot in common. There's one thing they share. You can't just lose your humanity in any situation. If you lose your humanity, if you betray, you'll get punched in the face. I have a question.
Sasha, how did they let Alexei Arestovich leave Ukraine? That's the main question.
I don't know. I'm interested in another question. I have another main question, Dasha, regarding Alexei Arestovich. And with what money is Alexei Arestovich living, on Terre money or on Russian money? First. Second, I have a question. Why did the country even need a psychotherapist like that, who sold out to who knows whom and is now pushing completely Kremlin narratives? And third question, why is his rhetoric now identical to Medinsky's? These are the important questions. Let the law enforcement agencies and authorities of Ukraine answer everything else, whether it's about Alexei Arestovich or not, or anyone else like him. And
our audience, by the way, can also comment on this. That's a great topic for comments. We just asked these questions with Sasha. How did he leave the country? How was he allowed to do that? Whose money is he living on? And all the other questions that Sasha asked. So, dear audience, write in the comments what you think about this. We leave it up to you. Right, Sasha?
You see, what's really astonishing is that a person who had such high political influence and organization in Ukraine just died. He died politically. He's a political corpse now. And he buried himself. He buried himself behind the baseboard, you see?
Yes, and by the way, we just remembered Pavel Medinsky said yesterday, right, that Odessa is a Russian city, if I'm not mistaken. They're starting up this rhetoric about Odessa again. As I understand it, there's already information out that Putin wants to capture Odessa. Well, that's a completely unrealistic scenario. Seriously, what's even going on in the heads of these blockheads?
Listen, the guy wants to capture Odessa. He thinks that if he brings in 50,000 or however many of his troops, he'll be able to take over the region. He thinks he can capture all of Ukraine, even though even the British are openly writing now, listen, at this rate, it'll take you 99 centuries. You won't live to see it. Just forget about it. He just has some kind of senile fantasies that he thinks are important. Medinsky's job is just like Peskov's. One's a liar, the other just echoes him every single day. They all lie. They lie to themselves. All these people don't matter at all. All the plans are in Putin's head, not on Gerasimov's maps. All the dreams and all the goals are in Putin's head, not in Peskov's, Medinsky's, or anyone else's. He has one goal, to gain and hold on to power and to grab as much money as possible before the end. That's all there is to it. The main thing is to stay in power. So he looks and thinks, okay, good. The Ayatollah managed to stay in power. Yes, maybe there's practically no nuclear weapons left there. Yes, the power is already shaky there. Yes, many from his inner circle are gone, killed off, but he stayed in power. And the country became even poorer. And the country became even more internally outraged. And there will be an even bigger explosion in the future. This is perfectly clear and obvious. But he stayed in power. But he also wants to stay in power. And he plans to stay in power. That is his most important goal. To outlast all these Patrushevs, Sechins, Medvedevs, Shoigus, Abramoviches, Deripaskas, and stay in power. And if necessary, he'll poison train cars and send people to Siberia. All those who disagree with the party's policy, or rather with his policy.
Sasha, to wrap up, there's something I wanted to ask you. I don't understand what's going on between the representatives of Chechnya and the Ministry of Defense. What is this situation where near Belgorod, Kadyrov's men beat up a military policeman, forcing Gubarev to go after Laudinov? Why did Adam Kadyrov suddenly get married so abruptly? Is this connected to the fact that Chechnya might soon have a new leader? What do you think is happening between the Ministry of Defense and the Kadyrovites? And why did Ramzan Kadyrov suddenly disappear while his son met with Putin before the wedding?
What's going on? What's happening is yet another attack on Kadyrov. And on the other hand, Kadyrov is simply showing through this meeting between Putin and his son that everyone should calm down. The power will remain with my clan, no matter what the situation is. Putin supported me. That's it. Everyone relax. And the Ministry of Defense is saying, shut up. And in the FSB, those who are dissatisfied are also grumbling quietly, while those who support Kadyrov from the other side, for example, the first deputy director of the FSB, are actually rubbing their hands in anticipation. So right now, the situation is extremely simple. They showed the son, married off the son, he's the future heir. Kadyrov for now is in some kind of condition. We don't know exactly what, but that's it. Power remains in Kadyrov's hands. This is a signal to the elite. And immediately everyone congratulates the son. Volodin congratulates him. Peskov congratulates him. The entire elite congratulates him. But why are they congratulating him? Because it's obvious that yes, Putin has placed his bet on him, but not for now. There's also the question of age. He's still, I think, 17, this Adam Kadyrov. On top of that, these are issues related to strengthening his position, his clan, and so on. Kadyrov's father will do everything to ensure that power passes to his clan, his sons, his family, his closest circle. He doesn't care about anything else. But he's preparing escape routes. I don't know for whom, for himself, for his close ones. And just like Lukashenko, he's now sending money to Saudi Arabia, to the United Arab Emirates. That's clear. In other words, he's making himself a parachute, a backup airfield in case something happens to Putin, if Putin rebels, if Lubyanka wins, or the Ministry of Defense wins this war. He has a lot of enemies. In fact, he's only protected by the National Guard, essentially in the person of Zolotov. His relationship and agreements with the FSB are completely mixed. Some support him, some don't, and so on. That's why we saw yet another signal. Yes, the future belongs to me, the future belongs to my family, my successor is my son. Putin supported it, so shut up and keep quiet. I'm not interested in you anymore. And everyone saw this and started congratulating and supporting him. Does this mean that the infighting, the internal struggle between the security forces and Kadyrov will stop? That the FSB or the Ministry of Defense will stop launching drones at gas stations in Chechnya? No. Does this mean that Kadyrov will stop playing his own game and avoid getting involved in situations where he doesn't need to be? Well, for example, he won't accidentally spot Ukrainian concentrations or Ukrainian groups in this or that direction again. No, it doesn't mean that. Does this mean that Putin will abandon Kadyrov? No, because Putin needs Kadyrov. Because Kadyrov really is his loyal foot soldier, no matter how you look at it. Does this mean that Putin can break ties with Kadyrov now? No. And Kadyrov knows this perfectly well and assesses the situation accurately. He has a very good political instinct. That's why we're actually seeing Kadyrov's power in Chechnya being strengthened right now. And we understand that in this struggle, the military, the Ministry of Defense, individual generals, and Bastrikin's investigators have lost. For now. We'll see how the situation develops.
Friends, our tandem, Dasha plus Sasha, Sasha plus Dasha, brings you new insider information every week. Let us know in the comments what you think about this. Viewer geography. We work for an audience all over the world so that they know the truth about Russian aggression and Russia's war against Ukraine. That's why every comment from you is priceless. I read all the comments and leave hearts. Top analyst Alexander Demchenko. Sasha, thank you very much and see you soon.
Thank you, Dasha. See you next time. Bye.